Good morning, everybody. It's the Wifey Wake Up No Makeup podcast. And here we are. Got a bit of a late start today, and that's because it's my hubby's birthday. And you can fill in the blanks in between. So, good morning, everybody. And today's topic is He Feels Too. And first of all, I have to say that I'm not the type of person, well, my husband might say otherwise, but I'm typically not the person that is all about everything has to be the same for men and men and women. If he gets to do that, she has to be able to do that. If he gets that, she gets that. I'm not about that equality. And so I just have to say from the onset that He Feels Too is not about trying to create that equality between men and women. It is about recognizing that he feels too. And it came to mind as I was preparing for my husband's birthday that, it took me quite a while to realize this, that men do feel as well. And I think it's easy to overlook because they're the tough guy, right? And they're the providers, they're the protectors. And especially as women, if there's an instance where we see that maybe they're not as big and tough as we thought they were, it kind of diminishes what we think of them in our minds. But we can't let that be. We can't let that out and show in our actions with him. You always need to be mindful that he is as sensitive and sometimes more than you are. And I know this it may not seem true, but it is so true. And really, the guy, in my experience and observation, the guys that are bigger and tougher on the gruffer they are on the outside, they're protecting a very soft inside. Now, mind you, I am absolutely not harping on guys. This is not a put down. This is, I just have to say, there's a sign too that we drive by on the highway that totally was not written by a guy. And it's real men love babies. And it's so antagonistic. And that's kind of an example of what I'm talking about, is that I think the culture and our examples, at least my examples growing up, were certainly tearing down men. And without even giving any kind of consideration of that they have feelings even as human beings, and that they actually may be as sensitive or more than we are as women. It's hard to say, are they as sensitive or more, because they're just different, right? Men and women are innately different. And I think that they carry their emotions differently. And one of the examples that I talk about, that I wrote about in the intro to this podcast, is you might not even recognize that he is actually feeling sensitive. And because from what I hear from other women, from my husband and other guys, through my husband, a lot of times, is that they're not letting on. They don't want to then get even more vulnerable and say, you know, what you did hurt me. Or when you said that in front of our friends, that really affected me. That puts them in even a more vulnerable state. And if they're beat down even more while they're being vulnerable, they're going to shut off even more. And I think what happens a lot of the times, men, as women, I hear women say a lot, he just goes to his man cave, he goes to his office, he goes to the garage. And I think in a lot of, if not, I think in a lot of those cases, they've just given up trying to communicate that what you're saying or doing is really affecting them. Now, fortunately, my husband is a super communicator. He's amazing at communicating. And sometimes I wish he'd communicate less, kind of. But the benefit is that I actually learn these things. I hear these things rather than him, maybe saying it once or twice and then just going his merry own way and just doing the things that he wants to do. And I feel very grateful and fortunate for that. And that is a large part of why I'm doing the Wifey School and Wifey Wake Up podcast, is because in almost 24 years of marriage, there have been a lot of lessons like these. And fortunately, like I said, my husband's a super communicator and he lets me know how he feels. And then we have conversations, especially on the John and Tara podcast, about how do men generally think. I think men are known and accurately known as being pretty simple, which kind of, I think, mystifies them about us as women, of like why we don't get them, because they're rather simple. And it's not to say that in a demeaning kind of way. It's just matter of fact. And so it kind of puzzles them that, why don't you get this? The playbook is this thick, or just a couple pages. It's a pamphlet. And that's what I'm trying to do, is just share with you the hard learned lessons. My husband and I haven't had many conversations, but just getting back to, he feels too. We live in an amazing era where we get to see and hear and learn from many people out there, and podcasts are really wonderful for this. And if you can find a podcast, I'd like to do this. So if you know anyone who would like to share a story, but if you've ever heard a man, or even in person, if you've ever heard a man share the story of maybe going through divorce, that's a big one. It affects so many people. So many people choose to go through divorce. It's very common, and is obviously devastating for both parties and for both men and women. But if you were to listen to a man's story, and particularly a man that you don't know, because you're not like triggered by what they're saying, because it's not your guy, not stuff that you've been through, you'll be amazed at how sensitive they are. And there are stages of grief, as many of us know. And I think a particular community like the red pill community has gotten a lot of grief about being particularly bitter or very gruff about their situations, about having gone through divorce, or just many bad situations with women. And I think it's particularly that they're just stuck in a stage of grief. And hopefully they'll move through it. And women do it too. I'm not trying to point out guys as the bad guys here. I'm trying to emphasize that guys feel too, and that's why they're going through these stages. And we can help as a wife. Those of you who want to be a wifey, you can help by, first of all, just recognizing that they are very tender and very sensitive. And no matter how tough they look on the outside, no matter how big and amazing you think they are, just carry that almost like secret knowledge. You don't even have to tell him, like, I know you're so sensitive and I know you're really feeling. No, just actually treat him as if you think that, and you'll be amazed. So this came up today also, because there are two sides of the spectrum, right? You can prevent this from seeping into your being. Preventing, that is, you can be aware that this is the case, and make sure that that awareness doesn't slip away. And then you can also bring it back into your relationship and into your awareness. And that's something that I've had to do over and over again. I mean, I have a guy who is very competent in so many areas, physically, mentally, emotionally, and I think the world of him. And so what I found happens for me is, I think he's, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think he's a 12. And so if I perceive him at a level 6, for example, I'm disappointed. And then I have taken it out on him, which does not help, right? I mean, none of us, when we already know that we're not performing to our best, none of us want to be torn down, and especially by the one that we love the most and that we're trying to perform for. So I want to refer to my notes again, because there was something else that I thought was really important to share. Let's see. What was it? So this is it. So the other end of the spectrum is also you can feed his love tank and doing those little things. So this came to me in preparation for my husband's birthday. I made special arrangements for today, adjusted my schedule, and those little things really do matter. No matter how much you think your husband should be doing those little things, or he might not recognize or do little things for you, your little things really do add up for him as well as they do for you. But the thing is that the kryptonite of that situation is when you criticize, condemn, complain, or simply don't appreciate him. You could have built up a pile of 100 brownie points and tokens, all sorts of good stuff. But if you criticize him, especially in front of friends, that is going to even create a deficit. That is, like I said, like kryptonite to men. And so while the little things, especially to women, those really add up, for men, it's just being consistently pleasant, being consistently supportive and appreciative. And a lot of the times it's also just not doing the big kryptonite things, like especially criticism and disrespect, and especially in front of others. No matter how close you are to these other people, sometimes it's even worse. Well, it is worse if the closer you are to these people. If it's in front of strangers, it's in front of strangers. They don't know you. Still not good. I'm still not condoning that. But really, I've had to learn the hard way. And fortunately, my husband, again, is a very good communicator. And that's why I'm sharing it with you. I'm really fortunate that he did not just turn to going to the garage or his man cave. But I have these tokens, these things to share with you. So men and women are different. Thank God we're different. We're similar in ways. We both feel very deeply, but I think we feel really differently. And just because he's tough on the outside, he's the provider, he's the protector, doesn't mean that isn't very soft on the inside. And it's up to us, especially as his woman, to be very aware of that and treat that part of him very tenderly, because we are the ones that can be the balm for that part of him, and we are the part that can absolutely tear that apart in just a few words. And I'm going to try to come up with a story, or I'll bring this up with my husband. Maybe on the John and Tara podcast, we'll talk about this a bit too, because I'm sure my husband has some stories, which stories often help, right? And to really hear from a guy's point of view as well, I think for me has been very enlightening, not just my husband's, but like I said, hearing other men telling their stories of divorce and so forth, and really hearing how it affects them so deeply, and especially if kids are involved, that it just shapes so much of who they are into the future, just as it does for us as women. And again, it's not about equality. It's about recognizing. I think it's very important to recognize and appreciate our differences. That's really what makes our world so interesting. It would be so boring otherwise. And also to really treat the one we say that we love the most with the most love and compassion and care. So again, this is the Wifey Wake Up podcast, Wifey Wake Up with no makeup. And, each day I'm striving to share some inspiration, a tidbit from my almost 24 years of marriage. Hopefully stories that can help inspire and shed some light, and so that your current marriage can be even better, or those of you who are inspiring to be a wifey can enter into a relationship with this knowledge and these skills, so that your marriage starts out that way. And even if you're not with that significant other yet, you're becoming that person to attract the type of person that you want to have in your life, to have a hubby and wifey situation. So you can be the type of person to attract that hubby that you you envision in your future. Please feel free to comment, like, subscribe, of course. If someone came to mind as I was sharing that you think could benefit from this, please pass this along, and have a wonderful day, everybody. See you tomorrow.